This week on Country Music Junkies, we have a band to introduce you to and a gentleman to introduce you to. His name is Nigel Barker. Nigel's on the phone, and he is from the band Cowboy Hat. Nigel, thank you so much for joining us.
Nice to be here. Nice to talk to you.
Now, I want to talk first a little bit. I know Cowboy Hat is kind of your new project, but I want to talk a little bit about your experience in the music industry, because you've been in the industry for, 35 plus years. You got your first record deal when you were 19 years old. You've worked with huge acts. Can you give us a little bit of a background to who you are before you started this Cowboy Hat project?
Well, yeah, I started back in when I was 19. While I was at university, I got a record deal. So I chucked all my books out the window and told all my companions on the course that I was going to be a pop star and I'd see you later. And what happened is I got a deal with a record company called Genetic Records, who had people like Steve Strange on it, and the record company folded after about 6 months, which left me kind of high and dry.
Right.
So I got a job in recording studios as a T-boy.
Cool.
Initially a little studio down in South London that was run by some gangsters who ended up being major suspects for a major gold bullion robbery at Heathrow Airport about 10 years later.
Oh my.
I saw them on the news. And then I got into Air Studios, which is one of the biggest studios in the world, and I became an assistant engineer there, and that's where I ended up working with quite a lot. In a modest way, as a T-boy and assistant engineer, just working with some of my heroes. So one minute I was listening to their music, the next minute I was in the same room as them, watching them put their music together.
Wow.
Which was very exciting.
Who was one of the coolest artists that you've worked with?
Well, while I was working for Adam and the Ants, Paul McCartney and his wife used to come in, and every morning they'd pop their head round the door and say hello, and they were very friendly.
Oh, lovely.
So that was really exciting, and I remember playing him with Paul and beating him several times. Teaching him how to play Asteroids.
Amazing, that's awesome.
Which was, so that was all really exciting, and it ended up with me, I worked so hard, I got chosen to go to Air Montserrat in the West Indies to do an Elton John album. And unfortunately, I had a really bad car accident. I was driving a car back to the studio, and it's a volcanic island. It's very steep, and I drove the car off the edge of a cliff, basically.
Oh, my.
Ended upside down in a mango tree. Nearly died. But worst of all was I no longer had use of my left hand. I'd severed all the tendons in my left hand, so I couldn't play anymore, which was completely devastating.
Absolutely.
Especially as the police were about to come and record Synchronicity, and I wanted to be there to help them do that.
Oh.
So that's enough name dropping, I think.
That's okay. We like that. That's cool. So, you had this awful accident, but from what I understand, 30 years later, something cool happened. Do you want to tell us what that was?
Well, I ended up working in the television and film industry instead because kind of music went sour for me. And about 17 years after the accident, I bought a Harley Davidson. And I rode that Harley Davidson for 14 years with a really heavy left-hand clutch. And I think the clutch brought my stiff fingers back to life again, because I noticed that back in May 2011 there was enough movement there to play more than 2 chords. So I got very excited and went out and bought an acoustic guitar and started to sort of doodle around a bit, and then I started to work really hard at getting my hand together. Went out and bought the guitar I had when I was 18. And yeah, I had one guitar back then. I've now got 21 3 years later.
Wow.
All sorts of crazy guitars, like 1 strings and 3 strings and all kinds of stuff. Cigar boxes, you name it, I've got one of them. So.
Well, that's an incredible story of battling against the odds and coming back, and you've come back in a music way to bring us Cowboy Hat, your new band. You are set to release your debut album on June the 3rd. It's called A History of the American West and Other Stories. Can you tell us what fans can expect to hear from that album?
Well, after about a year of playing, I decided I wanted to start writing my own music, and I made a few tracks and people seem to like what they do, and I thought, well, I'm going to use this cowboy hat image. What am I going to write about? Well, why don't I write about Americana, American subject matter? What would be the obvious thing to do? Well, the American West. And me being me, I'm kind of, I like fine detail, and I'm, a very kind of conscientious person. I thought I'll try and take on an epic storytelling effort of telling all the major events of the American West in song, with verses in rhyming couplets, and it was a big challenge.
Absolutely.
I'm really pleased that I did. So I used one of some of my crazy guitars. I spend 4 days writing a lyric sometimes, and some days I get nothing but one verse. But just kept persevering, and I think in the meantime I've been doing some work as a writer. I've worked as a screenwriter on 3 scripts during my non-music phase, and I think that facility with the English language and that writing skill informed me on how to write these long epic lyrics, and it surprised me too. I didn't know where it all came from. I hadn't been writing songs or lyrics for a long, long time, but I really enjoyed the process of getting these stories into 12 verses.
Well, you've
with
been
a setup and a payoff at the end. So I'm pleased they got it done.
Yeah, absolutely. You've been able to put together something very special. Fans, you can check out the entire album once it's released on June 3rd. Where will fans be able to check that out if they want to? Can they get that on iTunes or from your website?
Yeah, it'll be released for download everywhere.
Excellent.
Because it's on CD Baby, so CD Baby will put it on iTunes, and it's going to be on Spotify and everywhere else.
Perfect.
Physical DVDs, I'm not sure yet.
And if fans want to check you out in the meantime, how can they do that?
They can come and have a look at the website, which has got about 10 videos of us for various tracks. It's also got, you can stream the album on that as well.
Excellent.
So that's www.cowboyhat.tv.
Excellent. Well, fans, be sure to check Nigel and Cowboy Hat out online. You can definitely check out some of their songs. And the new album, again, will be released on June 3rd, A History of the American West and Other Stories. Nigel, thank you so much for chatting with us today.
My pleasure.